Hello, hello. Welcome to our community open hours. Usually, I run this with Dennis. Dennis is traveling today, so I'm alone there. Not really alone because you are there in the chat. And if you can say hi in the chat, tell me if you can watch us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter. First, to be sure that you are there and that everything is working correctly for the streaming. And also, if you have any question about Yugabyte, do not hesitate in the chat. The goal, the topic today is really to go through the community channels, forum, Slack, or others, and look at the kind of questions that we have and how we answer them. So yeah, even more important today, if you have questions on the chat, I prefer to take your questions. If you have not, then I will take the some questions that I find interesting there. Also, if you let me just check to see if we have some comments. Not yet. Maybe there is also some lag. I have to refresh also on LinkedIn to be sure that we are there. Let me see in comments. Yeah. Okay. I see Pete telling me on LinkedIn that it works. So that's perfect. First of all, this morning for me in Europe, now we are late afternoon here. This morning, I woke up early to attend the DSS, the Distributed SQL Summit that was planned for Asia. So that was a bit early there. If you attended it, if you attended the keynote, the sessions, please also tell me in the chat. There were a lot of good sessions also from people using Yugabyte, customers, real life experience migrating, for example, a very interesting talk about migrating from MongoDB to Yugabyte, migrating live, running both in parallel until they switch to it. So it's another interesting channel, the Distributed SQL Summit, where we can also share information and information also from the big customers. So if you were there also, you can tell me in the chat. Of course, the time now is not very friendly for Asia, India, Japan. It was better this morning. Yeah. Okay. Let me check where we have the comments. I have to refresh sometimes the windows on LinkedIn. We stream on StreamYard, which is supposed to gather all comments. It works quite well. It's a bit more difficult with LinkedIn. Then I have to refresh to be sure that we don't miss anything. And then first I will start. I will show some questions, especially questions from a user, Ron, that who may be in the chat. Why? Because I also asked even if the questions are in public channel like Slack, I prefer to ask if I can share it on the screen for the live. But I will also show you something very interesting that I've seen in Slack and that I was just testing it before. Let me share my screen there and show you the Slack thread. I don't know if I can zoom it. I hope it is okay. So in the Slack channel, we have questions, of course, from users, open source users, or can be also customers who have supports. They can also interact in the community Slack. But we have also contributors because it's open source, and people just testing and sharing what they do with Yugabyte. And I came upon Vishnu thread who was saying that he tested a multi-region cluster using AWS EKS, the Kubernetes managed service in AWS with East.io to have a network between different regions. And well, he said he will write an extensive blog, but already he was already sharing. Let me see if I can show it. Sharing on GitHub all the information, and so all the setup, EKS, Istio, then installing Yugabyte with the N charts, and just running it and checking. For example, I don't know if we see the latency there. I was just looking at it and also testing the failures if a region is not available. So that's really interesting. And I also tested it. That I did that just before the live. So finally, I stopped my lab before, but basically it works following the instructions very well, and I was able to get the cluster up and the services to access the Postgres endpoint, the master, all that. But finally, just before the live, to save my AWS credits, I stopped everything. But just mentioning that, yeah, if you follow the Slack channel, it's also interesting to see not only your questions, but what others are doing with Yugabyte. Okay, let me check if we have, yeah, Pete got some of the DSS sessions. So Pete, you are in the same time zone. So yeah, it was early, but yeah, the DSS the sessions from this morning are recorded on the same website, and they will be available for replay very soon. Maybe I can share the link to it. So Distributed SQL Summit, I think that if you go to On Demand Asia, I'm not sure it's already there. This was the one from last year. If you want to go, I think you need to register. Marketing like that you register so that they have your email address if you accept to receive emails. And if you register, I will just, let me just click on the link and show you the agenda quickly. And if you register, you will have access to the replay, maybe not today, but probably tomorrow. Let me post that in the chat. And yeah, first looking at the comments, we have Yogi, who also looked at what Vishnu did with EKS and Kubernetes, and saying that it is awesome. Yes, it is. If you have questions on Kubernetes on the Slack channel or forums, you will probably have good answers from Yogi. So here you have sessions in English and there was a track in Japanese also. With very good content. I do not understand Japanese, but I know the speakers, and I can tell you that this data modeling, if you speak Japanese, is probably very interesting for any distributed SQL databases, and also the feedback from users, what they did. So this is about the distributed SQL summit that was there this morning. This was about the deployment on Kubernetes. And then if there is no special questions, we will look at some questions that we had. Maybe first, I will just mention the different channels that we have. If you go to yugabyte.com, and if you click on community, you need to click, because with the mouse there are not all links there. But if you click, you have everything to join the Slack, community Slack. On Stack Overflow, I don't see a lot of questions on Slack Overflow, because Stack Overflow is more for developers, and because we are Postgres compatible. basically the questions go to the Postgres tag in Stack Overflow. The forum, let me show you the forum, for example, that I opened there. So we don't have a lot of questions on the forum. We have people running Yugabyte, I think even in production without support. They just manage it and they use the open source because all features are there. So there are questions about problems encountered. And of course, you don't have the same support as when you pay for commercial supports, but we do the best effort support, which works quite well usually. Sometimes we may even propose to start a quick zoom to look at your cluster. That's faster than exchanging a lot of logs, for example. And there are also questions about how it works or the features. For example, I see merge statement from Yugabyte. Yeah, that's because Postgres has the merge statement since Postgres 14, I think. Yugabyte is for the moment, or Postgres 15 for the merge statement. For the moment, Yugabyte is Postgres 11. There is an ongoing project to merge with Postgres 15. This is quite long because it's not only being compatible with Postgres 15, it's also being able to upgrade online to the Yugabyte version running Postgres 15 and also roll back the upgrade if in case everything is wrong. So this project is quite long. It will happen this year. I don't know exactly when, but if you look at the so this is the Git issue about the upgrade to Postgres 15. So that's a question we have a lot. And when people ask, are you compatible with Postgres 15? I usually ask which feature do you need? Because there are workarounds. For example, in this case, for the merge, I will come back to the question later, but there are workarounds because people were doing kind of upset for a long time. If you want to see how it goes for this project on Postgres 15, you can go to the source code in GitHub. We have a branch. So the releases are from the master branch, but we have a branch currently where we are currently working on Postgres 15, and you can see in the commits, for example, if you want to follow what the colleagues are doing to merge with Postgres 15. And this is quite active 2 days ago, 4 days ago. So yeah, there is work in progress on that. Let me go back to the community forum, checking if there are any question on the channel. I refresh LinkedIn just to be sure. Of course, it's easier when Denis is there because we can check the questions while the other is talking. But yeah, that works. I'm still sharing my screen, so we have seen the merge. The question about the merge, sorry. Merge was this one, the merge statement, and just mentioning that if you ask for a feature that we don't have yet, probably we will propose a workaround. So for example, here I linked to a blog post or a series of blog posts, how to do upsert merge without having merge, and in an optimal way, because you have also the own conflict. But usually when you do complex SQL to get the best performance, it's quite good to use CTE, the with clause, because it's easier to work in bulk with the data. So yeah, that was a kind of answer on the forum. And which other channels? Of course, we have GitHub issues. Let me go to it there, for example. So you can see that if you have questions or you think you have found a bug or whatever, just open an issue on Git. This is the best way to improve the product. Of course, there are priorities on it. And also, if you want to contribute, here I've added the label good first issues. Our engineers looking at the issues that are open, they have an idea how complex it is to fix, for example, or to implement or to improve something, and um, and they flag the good first issue. If you want to contribute, it's probably better to contribute on something simple. Yeah. Um, so I see that Rob has joined. Yeah, Rob, if you have questions, do not hesitate to ask here on the chat. Of course, the forum is available, but for today during the open hours, it's better here. And Rob, while you are there, um, I will browse a few questions that you asked to us on the Slack channel, just to show the community the kind of questions, answers that we can have. Let me just find uh, where it is on Slack. I'm doing it on another. Okay, let me just open it there, but I will open on another screen just because I don't want to share information that can be different. Okay, I have it here. So this is, for example, a question that Ron asked 2 months ago and was just about the support of Ubuntu. And what is really important with those questions is when you ask such question, of course we answer, but we also look if our documentation is clear about that, because maybe if you ask the question, the documentation was not clear enough. And so for this, Dennis answered that we recommend Alma Linux, but Ubuntu is supported. And let me show you, for example, the documentation for the support. So I've put the link. You have three ways to. There is an Ask AI bot, and of course Google should send you to the right place. Also, if you go often to the documentation, you will find your way through the quick starts, for example, through the reference configuration operating system. This is where you have the reference of all operating systems that are supported, and you can find Ubuntu there. So this means that it works. But when I answer those questions, very often also I just try to do as a user will do. So going to the documentation, sorry, I've put the link directly, but you want to launch and manage, install the software, start Yugabyte, and here are the instructions. And then when I have a question about that, rather than just answering, yeah, it works on Ubuntu, I test it. And this is what I will do, but very quickly here, just to show you, I've started a VM on EC2 with Ubuntu. And let me check the OS release there. So it's something according to the documentation that we should support. And I just follow the documentation. So we need to have Python 3, we need to have wget. So let me just do an update. Hope it will not be too long just to get all the latest. Okay, maybe it was not a really good idea. Yeah, 98%, that will come. And while it is doing that, then I will install wget and install everything. While there, maybe I will check other questions. So Rob has other questions. Let's give priority to the live questions. The other are already answered on Slack. So migrating live is a tech preview. Is there a risk of losing data on old server? when doing this on production, in other words, I understand it's not production ready as a tech preview. Um, but if the risk is all on the migration not working and not losing data on the old server, I am okay with that risk. That's a really, really good question. So migrating live is about using YB Voyager to copy data from existing Postgres or Oracle. I think I don't know if we support others for live migration, but let's say Postgres or Oracle. What it does is the idea of YB Voyager is to make it easy, make the migration easy. Um, and then you just start it, you connect to the source, you connect to the destination. First, you will test it on a test database for the source, test database for the destination. And then at some point, you will do it with production, means that you will connect to the source that is your production, let's say on Postgres, AWS, and you will start the migration. So it copies the schema, it copies data, and then it catch up with the online changes on the source. That's the idea of live migration with no downtime. And then it reads data and it sends it to Yugabyte so that when you are okay, when you know that the data is fresh on the destination and you have tested it, you looked at it, then you can switch your application to Yugabyte. So it is in preview, in tech preview. What I must answer to that. So let me just show the first part of the question. If it is tech preview, if it is not GA, don't use it with production on other sites because everything can happen. We know that every software is complex, and the goal of tech preview is to test it. We have customers with support who use some tech preview feature. They do that after checking with our support engineers because tech preview may mean that we didn't test and validate all corner cases. But if we know that you do not fit in those corner cases, we know that it works. So you can use something that is not GA if the support is saying yes, saying you that it is possible, and maybe they will follow, maybe they will look at the log to be sure that it's right. Here, the question is more subtle. It's about the source. Knowing how it works, it reads only from the source. So the risk of losing data on the source, on the old server, this risk is very, very small. But everything can happen. And if it's not GA, then maybe better not to do that. The problem also is that some if it loses some data during the transfer, I mean, it will not corrupt your source database. But if you lose data during the transfer, it's very difficult to be sure that you didn't lose any data. This is why you need to trust a tool that has been validated to transfer the data, because I mean, you can count the number of rows in tables, but that doesn't mean that you have exactly the same rows. If you really want to compare data, you need to read all rows on both sides and compare them. Maybe get a hash on all columns. I think you also need to read them with the different access path from sequential scan from indexes, because who knows is if one index is corrupt, then you will not see it if you query it. And most important, if you are doing a live migration, it means that the source is alive. And then you cannot really compare two databases that are changing because their state is always changing. And then if you want to compare it, you need to take a snapshot at exactly the same time. and that's difficult to compare. So I would say be careful if it's not GA. Do not use it with production, but we can also look at it at the specific case, and maybe engineers can validate some cases. So yeah, Yogi confirms that it's Postgres and Oracle for the source that can be done live. It means that we copy data, but we also use change data capture, basically logical replication. I think we use Debezium on Oracle, and we use logical replication on Postgres to read the changes on the source and send them to the destination. So yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to tell you you can do something. When I was doing some consulting, I knew where I can take some risks, but you cannot generally say, yeah, you can use it. Specific cases, maybe. Yeah. Okay, let me check if we have other questions. If not, I'm just going back just to be sure that installation on Ubuntu works. I install exactly the packages that are mentioned in the documentation. So Python, and Python is Python 3. I think the current version of Yugabyte D, the tool to start Yugabyte, is still using Python 2, but the next version will use Python 3. That's quite long to refresh. And then, yeah, maybe I started to do something that is long to do live, but just showing that I like to test everything. And let me check if there are other questions. Also a comment on the previous one. Yogi telling us that in Voyager, one safeguard is that the source database role is read-only. So that you are sure that YB Voyager will not change anything on your source database because it uses a read-only role, which means that your source database is protected. But it accesses to WAL, and yeah, you can miss some updates. So yeah, better be sure. Okay, I'm just continuing on this one, and then if you follow the documentation, you see that you can download the release. So here I have a case just to because we have the two architectures, and installing Yugabyte is enter of the release, going to the directory, running the post install. I don't know exactly what it does, but just run it. It's fast, and start it. Okay, and that's exactly what I've seen when I tested the documentation. We need an additional package, and I don't think it's changed yet on the documentation, but it will be done. And that's why I think it's very interesting when answering a question on Slack, just to check that the documentation doesn't mean anything. apt-get, I think we just need to install disttil. And again, in the next version using Python 3, all those dependencies will be clear. But yeah, that's something. Always test when you answer questions. And okay, I didn't install it, but I don't know the name of the package. But yeah, I will not do that now. But yeah, you get the idea that even when we say that something is supported, where was that? When something is supported, yeah, always good to test it just in case. And maybe depend on the environment. Maybe you have all the packages and that works. Okay. Another comment and another thing to remember is the fallback workflow, if it's important for you. And I think it's always important when you do a migration, you want to be sure that if anything is wrong, at least you can come back to the previous version. So think about that when you are doing a live migration. live migration, the advantage is that you have no stress. You can switch your application when it is ready, but then think also about the worst scenario just in case. Okay, let me take another question that we had. Something that I really like. I like execution plans. So questions about where's that? Yeah. Questions on execution plans and optimizer and queries. I always like that. I've opened the end of the thread where Ron was telling us, seriously impressed, 13 milliseconds. So that was the goal, having this query that is fast. But it took a bit of time for two reasons. Mainly the solution uses batch nested loop, which is now available, but it was not yet fully available. And also with execution plan, you need to understand a bit how it works. So the idea was exposing the problem. If you expose the problem, we need, if you have a performance issue with a query, show the execution plan, show the DDL. Maybe I can show you something that I do. Usually, if you want to make it easy for us to answer, the best is to provide the execution plan and the DDL to reproduce. But if you do not provide the DDL to reproduce, sometimes I just open ChatGPT, or yeah, this is the same as ChatGPT on Microsoft, and sometimes I ask ChatGPT, give me the DDL to create the tables involved in, and I paste the execution plan like that. And my goal, let me just open okay, it takes some time. I have another gigabyte there opened, and yeah, but I find that really, really cool. Even if you do not provide the DDL, then it looks at the tables that and the columns that are known in the execution plan. So of course, it's not the full one, but it can be useful to reproduce the problem. No. Is this a good copy paste? Yeah. Maybe something is missing. Create table. Yeah. Let's check if the query works as this. That would be magic. Of course, there are no rows, but maybe we don't need rows. So that's really cool. ChatGPT just created the tables where my query works, at least, using a nested loop. Was not exactly the one that was there. Also, generate the DML to insert about 1000 rows. So I'm not saying that you don't need anymore to provide a way to reproduce the problem when you have a question, but if you don't, maybe I will not bother you to ask you more questions, and I will try to reproduce it myself. Let me check while it is running. If we have other questions, I will refresh LinkedIn because I'm not sure that LinkedIn is really synchronized correctly. Seems to work. Okay. So let's see. Okay, it's a bit long, but yeah. You see that it can generate using generate random UID. So I will have to install the PG crypto package, but it generates from generate series. But basically, I will not wait for ChatGPT because I did that before, and I will run. So basically, I will run the same create table that was generated, and I'm not sure it's exactly the same, but those are the one when we answered the question that I tested, and the insert also was generated from ChatGPT. So inserting 1000 rows there, and the query, let me just copy paste the query with analyze. I have all that in VI and I hit caps lock and I messed completely my file. This is why I'm long to do that. Sorry, where I am, explain. So that was the query, and this query is typical from what is done in OLTP, where you read from large tables and you want the top n because you do some pagination. So this takes the 21 first rows when ordered there. And this is very long. I think it's should not be so long. Maybe I pasted something that is not good. But just to mention the solution for that, okay, that was really long. Just for not a lot of rows, just for well, not a lot of rows. I have 66,000 rows that were read. Actually, I have 100,000 rows that I inserted in newsfeed items, and those were read. There is no where clause on it, so it was a sequential scan. And the big problem there was this nested loop. Because to do the join, so it started with this table that returns 100,000 rows, and for each one, it was doing a nested loop to look into the other table with the condition, so fast access with an index there. The problem is that this fast access, so fast 0.1 millisecond, but this fast access happened 100,000 times, and then it's long. And that's the kind of thing that is already using too much CPU in Postgres, but it may be okay because it's reading blocks in memory. And when you go to a distributed database, it is distributed, then it cannot read from the local memory, and then you have some latency in it. So the idea there was simply to look at the execution plan and understand if it was the right execution plan. And when the query has an order by, when I know that it has to read a lot of rows and then sort them. So you see, it reads a lot of rows and then it has to sort all them and then just take the first 21. And it's never good and never scalable to read a whole table, sort it, just to have only 20 rows. So the idea with this execution plan is we want an access path to the data that gets fast the first 21 rows without having to sort everything. So you want something that is already sorted. And what is something that is already sorted in a SQL database? It's an index. So the solution there was to create an index on this table. And usually you think of indexes with the where clause with a filter. Here I have no filter on this one. So it seems that I copy pasted 2 times. I have no filter on this one. Sorry, I need the index only to get rows sorted. Even if I scan the whole index, at least it is sorted. And if it is sorted, I don't have to sort it anymore before applying the limit. So finally, even if I have an index where I start from the beginning to the end, I don't have to go to the end because I will stop after 21 rows. So let me create the index, and then we will see the execution plan that comes from that. If I run my explain again, of course, it's much faster. And I still see a nested loop, and I will talk about the batch nested loop after that. But even before batching it, the big advantage there is that scanning the index didn't have any sort operation on top of it. So it was limited to 21 rows. And here it has read 26 rows because a few were discarded by the join. So it had only to read 26 rows before to join. So 26 nested loops, and then getting the results. And we can do better with batch nested loop. Which version I have here? Select version. I'm on 220. Okay, I will run the same on 221. So I have to run my creation again. I will run that and look at the chat while it is running. Let me just create the tables again on this other database. Run the explain. Wow, that was already faster. I don't have the index yet. It is a sequential scan, but that's already faster because even if we join 100,000 rows, we do the loops, the nested loop by batches of 1,000. That's the default. And then we have only 98 loops. And so in total, it takes only 400 milliseconds there. But so that's an optimization that is done only on the database. You don't have the right index, so we still have to do the nested loops and sort all the rows, but we make it faster by batching the nested loop. But always better to optimize from the design of the indexes. So now if I create the index, I will have the advantage of the index plus the advantage of the nested loop. And yeah, that's fast. That's 10 milliseconds. You see the same index scan, nested loop, that is batch. So I have only 2 loops there. It has read a bit more in this case. So it scanned 1,000 rows because it is batched. I thought that we had an optimization for the first loop. I don't know if it's already in this version, but anyway, it reads 1,000 rows and accessed by batch to the inner table. So you can see that it has transformed it to the condition to an array. So only 2 loops, that fast. And there is no sort operation. You see the sort keys, but you don't see a sort operation like we had before. Yeah, like we had at the beginning, sort operation. So here, what we have a batch nested loop that preserves the order. And that's the latest optimization that we did, and that is in version 221. Automatically, the nested loop is batched and preserves the order so that if you run an order by and the limit later, it doesn't have to resort everything. So basically, in this thread, it was a bit longer because those were really new optimization that were not yet there. Let me check in the chat. Recently question without link in case YouTube blocked. Yeah, I don't know exactly if YouTube removes. I see the Yugabyte GitHub has forked Ruby PG repo, but it doesn't seem to be a smart driver. Any plans on making Ruby smart driver? That's a really good question. I don't have the answer. So that's another topic. We have smart drivers. What is smart in the smart driver? we are Postgres compatible, so you can connect with any Postgres driver from all the languages where we have drivers for Postgres. So you don't really need another driver to use Yugabyte. But because you can connect to multiple nodes, or all nodes in one region, for example, it's easier to provide just one endpoint and let the driver discover the other nodes. That's something that is not in the Postgres drivers, because with Postgres you have only one node where you can read and write. So what we did was forking the Postgres drivers for many languages and make them cluster aware, where it queries, basically, because I'm connected, I show you, it queries an internal view that we have. Select star from YB servers. There is an internal view that shows all the nodes and also the topology information. And then if you use a smart driver, it will connect round robin to one of those nodes. You can add some topology filter if you want to connect only to one specific region, then it will connect to it. And then you just have your connection pool on the application side, the smart driver, and when the connection pool opens a connection, the smart driver will connect to one node or the other. And the question is about the Ruby Postgres. And so, yes, there is a repo. I don't know exactly where we are yet. I think I've seen the question. I don't remember if it is on Slack. Let me check on Slack. Okay, I cannot answer now. If I have some colleagues who know, they can answer here, but we will answer on Slack. I don't know exactly where we are yet with the Ruby driver. Okay, let me check in the forum, because I've seen these questions. This question. Closing that, going to the forum. Okay, and I don't think I will have the answer from that, but just in case, if we look at the documentation and if we ask AI, I will ask the same question. If I can copy paste, I'm not sure. Whoops, don't know what happened there. I have many windows. Is there a smart driver for Ruby? And what is so Rob is saying in the open source version of Yugabyte DB, and let me just say that Yugabyte DB is open source. So there is only the open source version of Yugabyte DB. Automating YSQL dump all is very easy. Am I missing anything that makes this especially very inefficient on large, heavily used database? I will try to answer that later. Just showing there that the smart driver, if Ruby is not there yet, it's not GA yet, but I will check later. The question about why SQL dump all being slow, again, I don't have a real answer there. I think that we have, of course, we support YSQL dump all, which dumps, which is the same as the Postgres one. Postgres dump all. The things that we do differently for dump. So basically, it extracts the database cluster into a script, so it dumps all the databases. The only thing that we change for Yugabyte is that when Postgres, for example, dumps the schema, it generates the create table and then an alter table to set the primary key. Because we store the table in a primary key, it's more efficient to set the primary key in it. So there are a few things that we do differently than Postgres, but I don't think we have added some parallelism to it. So if you have a lot of data to move through dumps, it's probably better to do it in parallel, either different tables that you run in parallel, or you can also extract the data as CSV, for example, to import with copy, and that you can do in parallel or see also using the YB hash code. So I will check the dumple to be sure, and I will put the answer on YouTube, or we will see in Slack channel. So there are many questions where I don't have the answer. I have to ask to colleague. I have to test it, but it's really good to have them, and yeah, and we check. Another question. Is it a bad idea, or does it act similarly to pgdump in Postgres terms of database load? Yeah, pgdump all, pgdump, YSQL dump, they are all running at logical level. So basically, it reads the schema, generates the DDL, and then it reads the data and generates the copy. But we can do better with Yugabyte because we can parallelize a lot, but for that, need to check how the tablets are distributed. This is why, for the moment, if you move from Postgres to Yugabyte, for example, it will be faster to use YB Voyager, even if you don't need the online migration. It will be faster to use YB Voyager because YB Voyager will do things in parallel. And the goal of YB Voyager is also to do the best thing automatically. So it will look at the number of nodes that you have on the target and then set the parallel degree according on that. Okay. The Yugabyte Docs AI is incredible. I've used it extensively, a huge competitive advantage. Yeah, I also liked it. I'm often a bit skeptical with anything AI to answer question, but this one is really good because it gives the links to the source, to the documentation, and also you can help to improve it. So if you think the answer is good, you can say good answer. And if you think it is a bad answer, then you can say bad answer and say why. And we have colleagues looking at that and improving this AI engine, because AI is not magic. You can tune it, looking at what are the sources, the priorities. For example, there are a few things I remember when asking a question to AI, I got an answer that was outdated because it didn't really look at the latest version. So those are things that are improving. If you use this Ask AI on the documentation, please give a feedback, just thumb up if it's a good answer, bad answer. If you can put a comment, I just saying that it's AI, but your comment will be read by humans to improve it. And yeah, Yogi has also an interesting tip. You can use read replica to reduce the load on the main database when you extract data with pgdump all, for example. That can be something useful. And yeah, YB Voyager is awesome. Perfect. We still continue to improve it. For example, what we want to do, what we are doing with YB Voyager first was this ability to move data without thinking too much about many settings. The second thing was to do live migration by using logical replication, change data capture on the source. And what we will do also is kind of improve the analysis of your source database to maybe give you recommendation, or at least telling you if there are things that we do not support. we do not support 100% of Postgres features yet. There are a few features that are in the roadmap, but we need to build it in a scalable way. Must work differently. But at least what we want is that it's easy for you to run YB Voyager and get a warning telling you, be careful, you have this GIST index that we do not support yet. And then maybe you can think, is it mandatory? And then it is a no-go for the migration, or do you have a workaround? But checking that, we will also add some assessment about the performance. One thing that we want to do with YB Voyager is also to tell you, okay, your source database is running on 24 vCPUs. How many do you need for the target? You add high availability, so you add some replication. This takes resources, but how much? And also some settings. You want to go to a distributed database. Which tables do you want to distribute? How many tablets? So yeah, YB Voyager is something that will improve a lot. Okay, looking at the time, we have 4 minutes. Do you have any questions? Maybe because I was showing many things on the documentations. There are also places where we contribute that are not directly in yugabyte.com. For example, I blog a lot on Dev2. For example, I just published a blog post before the live about snapshot to old. If you want more information about the retention, I also wanted to show you. You probably, if you are on Slack, you probably know Jim, who answers a lot of questions, and he maintains on this blog some answers. And usually, what we publish on blog post or whatever comes from the questions. It's just that if someone has a question, then probably others will benefit from it. And Jim has this Yugabyte DB tips website where he has some small tips, very, very interesting. Save on typing SQL commands. So the tips are useful for Yugabyte, maybe are useful for Postgres. Just browsing directly to it. You run a lot, explain, analyze. You don't want to type it every time. So just set a variable with it, and then you can use this variable in front of the query. And you see, I learned something because I do sometimes the same, but with a select and with a gset. I didn't think that it was so easy to define a variable there. So many resources, hopefully they are referenced by Google. But also, if you ask questions on Slack, on forum, we will give you links to resources that can be very helpful. Okay, just checking. We are just on time. If there are other questions, just tell me. I will look at the chat in refreshing in LinkedIn. So my idea was really to show you some kind of questions, some kind of answers, and we do this community open hours every 2 weeks. You may have seen that we have skipped 1 week. We just shifted that because both Dennis and I were at conferences last week, and but we do it on Wednesday. The time should be okay for US, is okay for Europe. It's a bit more difficult for Asia. For the moment, we keep the same time so that people know where it is. But also, if you ask for it, maybe we can do some community hours at another time. Let me check at the question. Rob saying thanks for answering your question. Yeah, I still have a few questions to answer, but checking with colleagues to be sure that I'm giving the right answer. Usually I prefer no answer than an answer that is not exact. You have seen that I like to test everything. Okay, Yogi, thank you also for your answers there, your comments. And just to mention that we go a lot to conferences. I will go to, if you are in Europe, there are some Postgres days. I will be in Belgium soon. I will be also in JCon, in Java conferences. Denise is going in many places in US. And yeah, engage with the community in the direct channels or elsewhere. If you go to conferences where we are, please come and say hello. Okay, thank you very much, and see you in 2 weeks with Dennis. Goodbye.